Shalom uvracha, Rabbi Sai, Yedidei Hayakarim. It's so wonderful to see everybody on this beautiful, beautiful Yerushalayim day. Today's shir is going to be super special. As Hashem Yisbarach, we're going to do something that we take for granted. We literally look at it all day long. Every time we open up a siddur, every time we open up a sefer, we see Hebrew letters. And today we're going to go a little bit into the deeper dimension of what letters are all about. First of all, I just want to point out that the side of Aleph base, the secrets of the Aleph base, are actually found in the Gemara in Shabbos, Daf Kuf, Daled Amud Aleph. In other words, if somebody asks you, where in Shas can I open up the secrets of the Korach of the letters of the alphabet? The answer is in Masechah Shabbos, Daf Kuf Daled Amud Aleph. And I just want to give you a quote from my Rebbe, Rabbi Shapiro, just quoting him. He says, the Aleph base is the Seder Harishain Shabara Kadosh Baruch Hu. Kadosh Baruch Hu, when he created the world, the first thing he created was the letters of the Hebrew alphabet. Even before he created the Torah, you say, Stakel Ba'oraiso Bara Alma, to create that primordial Torah, the first thing that needed to be created was letters. And then he says, Haim, 1 second, let's give you the exact quote. He says, the Aleph base is Mehaseides Hachi Kamusim. They are the most powerful and deepest of all the secrets of Judaism. And then Ramesha said, if you want to study them properly, you have to learn the Kabbalistic Svarim, either Oisius de Rabbi Akiva, the letters as Rabbi Akiva explains them, or there's a sefer called Bris Olam with the parish of the Talmud of the Grover Naftali Hertz. Those are the Svarim that he recommends. There's no art scroll on these things. You got to learn these from the Kabbalistic sources. And then he added the following words, quote, Misha Mavin, Oimik HaSeder Shel Aleph Beis, anyone who understands the secrets of the Aleph Beis, Yodea HaOimek Shel Kol HaTorah Kulei. He knows the secrets of the whole Torah in its entirety. Basically, if you can understand today's shir, today we're going to be learning one letter, and that's just all we're going to do. We're going to reveal the secrets of one simple letter. So you have the opening. At least we're going to be scratching the surface of one of the 22 letters, or one of the 22 plus 7, the 7 final letters, one of the 27 letters. And he says, with that, you could possibly know the depths of all the Torah in its entirety. Another thing that Ramesha pointed out is that it's not by chance, nothing is by chance, that the answer to the question, where can you find this? The answer is found in Perek Haboineh. This is the Perek that you and I have been learning. We're learning the Malacha of Ksiva. Really, we started off in the 7th Perek, but we switched to the 12th Perek to finish up the Sugya of Ksiva, how to write. So the secret of writing is found in the 12th Perek. Similarly, the secret of the Aleph Beit is found in the 12th Perek. Says Rabbi Shapiro, not a surprise, because the Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation, written by Avram Avinu himself, according to our tradition, the Sefer Yetzirah called the building blocks of the world, he calls them avonim, bricks, and he called a bias, is in the language of, this is actually, he's quoting the Sefer Yetzirah over here, that oisios are avonim, and tevos, which is the houses, is teva, which is words, is called a bias. So you have something incredible. You have that the Sefer Yetzirah says, if you want to create the world, you need bricks and you need houses. What are bricks? Letters. What are houses? Words. Who says this? The Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation itself. So therefore, if you want to talk about this b'derech remez in the Masechta, you have it in Perek Haboineh in Shabbos. Shabbos is all about the Melechas HaMishkan. Many, many times together, you and I have quoted the Heilige Stipler. The Stipler says that we know on Shabbos you're not allowed to do things. What does it mean to do things? So go to the Mishkan. The Mishkan is the source of all of doing things with physicality to elevate it to something higher. In turn, the building blocks of everything physical comes down to letters and words, letters and words. So, for example, when we learned together that Adam Arishon was capable of giving names to animals, basically he would look, for example, into a dog, and he would see, because Adam Arishon knew the Sefer Yetzirah, he knew the secrets of creation, he would see in a dog a kaf and a lamed and a base in that sequence, and he would say, Kelev, this is a Kelev. In other words, it's not just randomly calling it something, calling it a hund or calling it a dog. No, it was created with a kaf and a lamed and a base. Those are the bricks that created this house called the creation of the dog. That's how Adam Arishon was capable of naming every single creature in this world. So without further ado, if you have a Gemara in Shabbos, Daf Kuf Daled, it's going to be very useful. I'm going to try and summarize half an Amud by breaking it down. I think I broke it down into 5 steps. I broke it down into 5 steps. In my notes over here, those of you that don't have it in front of you, you won't need it. It's just the next couple of minutes is going to be a little technical, and then it becomes super interesting. So we're going to start off with just a technical side of what the Gemara is trying to do, and then we're going to go in the deep end, and Gal Einai v'abita niflos v'terasech, Hashem, open up my eyes. I want to see the secrets of your Torah. That is what is going to happen this beautiful Yerushalayim morning for you, this beautiful American evening. There's no Canadians here. So let us begin. Let us begin over here. Everything begins actually in the Mishnah on Daf Kuf Gimel Amud Aleph, a statement of Rabbi Yehuda. The Mishnah on Daf Kuf Gimel Amud Aleph, which is the Mishnah that talks about the malacha of ksiva, of writing, has a statement of Rabbi Yehuda. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Matzinu, Shem Cotton, Miteich Shem Gadol. A person can be chayiv for writing. Remember, the malacha of ksiva needs for you to write two separate letters. The pashtus, at this point now, we're assuming it can't be 2 letters of the same, 2 different letters. And if you plan to write a word that has 5, 6, 7 letters in it, but you wrote 2 out of those 7, but those 2 have meaning on its own, you're already chayiv. That is the chiddush of Rabbi Yehuda. You've created something, a davar shemiskayim, a real word. You knew that to write those 7 letters, you had to write those 2 letters. If those 2 letters on their own have true meaning, said Rabbi Yehuda, you are chayiv. And then he gives you examples. Shem is Shimon or Mishmuel. Really, they're the same case. The letter Shem means a name, or Shem is one of the sons of Noach. Mishimon or Mishmuel. Next, Noach Minachor. Next, Don Midaniel. And then finally, God Gadiel. I have no idea why he needs so many examples, except to maybe force you to ask the question, who in Chumash was Gadiel? Does anybody of my listeners know who Gadiel was? Do you remember who Gadiel was? You can scream out the answer if you remember. I'd be very impressed. I'll give you a clue. You read it in the Chumash. You're in America, so you're a week behind us in Eretz Yisrael. It's kind of annoying. So last week was Shlach Lecha, and you saw over there the ill-advised head of Shevet Zvulun. What was his name? Gadiel ben Saidi, right? The Mate Zvulun. He was Nebuch, one of those 10 of the Shvatim that had to be destroyed. Last week we spoke about that the Shvatim were the side of Achdus. I don't know why no one from my listeners screamed to me, Rabbi Nissel, you're a week ahead. Why are you talking about Shlach Lecha? So this makes no difference. This week I already realized that I'm talking about Korach, and you guys, hold on 1 second. Yeah, what am I talking about? So 1 second. You're reading Shlach Lecha this Shabbos, is that correct? You're about to read Shlach Lecha. Okay, I'm sorry. So tomorrow morning in Shul, Friday, Shabbos morning in Shul, You'll learn about God Megadiel, and you'll remember the shir. Next week you're doing Korach, and I'm going to prep you for Korach today because it was only yesterday that I chapped that you're a week behind me. Doesn't make any difference. The Torah is good, and you can wait a week before you really enjoy it when you learn the parsha of Machlokes and Korach. Hold on, okay? Summarizing, step number 1 is the statement of Rabbi Yehuda that if you do 2 letters from a big word and the 2 letters are independently a name that is real, that makes sense, you're already going to be chayav. That's step number 1. Step number 2, the Gemara asked the question, how on earth can you be chayav for Shem Mishmuel? How on earth can you be chayav for Shem Shimon? The letter mem is written in the name Shimon with was called a MEM PASHUT, a regular mem, not a MEM SOFIT, which is the mem that you write at the end of a word. We call it the final mem. Sometimes called kafuf, different words the Gemara uses, but we're going to use PASHUT and SOFIT, regular mem and final mem. The bottom line is that if you wrote the Shem Mishimon, you're writing a regular mem, and when you read it, you're not reading a regular Hebrew word. It's almost like you'd say, wait a second, I'm writing with a shinoi over here. We're going to see in a moment it's not a shinoi at all, but that's the Gemara's question, that the proper word to write Shem is Shin Mem Sofit, Shin final mem, Shin Mem Sosum. That's the Gemara's question. It's interesting, the Gemara could have equally asked on Don Midoniel. It's exactly the same question, but I think that we're focusing on the letter Mem because as we get to the luchos in a few minutes' time, you're going to see the letter Mem has super significance. Today's topic is about the letter Mem. So hold on. The Gemara asks the question, Midami, Mem, the shame, is Sasum, Mem de Shimon is Pasuach. Okay, that's a good question. Answers the Gemara. This is all on Daf Kuf Gimel Amud Beis, 2/3 down the page. So the Gemara answers and says, Ama Rav Chisda. So Rav Chisda saves the day, and he says the following words: Zeis Emeres. This is the great Chiddush. Zeis Emeres. Sasum Vasua Pasuach Kasher. He says that in a Sefer Torah, if you mix up the two, no big deal. Final mem, regular mem, pashut, sasum, doesn't make any difference. It's all the same in halacha. This is the big chiddush of Reb Yehuda in the Mishnah, who says this, Reb Chisda in the Gemara. That's the chiddush over here. Now, so we know this is not halacha, by the way. Let me just take a l'chaim over here. We know this is not halacha, and God forbid, if Shabbos morning you and I saw in the middle of a word, if you saw the word, you guys, the word meraglim with a final M, a capital M at the very beginning, so yeah, you got to fix that Sefer Torah. But Rav Chisda is saying that Rabbi Yehuda would hold perfectly fine, no big deal whatsoever. The Gemara is going to ask on Rav Chisda's statement with a brisa. So you could ask, well, he's got Rabbi Yehuda to back him up, but it doesn't make any difference. The Gemara is going to go with a different mahalach. The Gemara is going to ask from a brisa. This is actually what we call step number 3 in learning up the sugya. The Gemara says there's a brisa that says a whole list of things that makes a Sefer Torah possible, and one of the things in that brisa is kfufim. You turn into pshutim. You are chayav. These are examples of things that don't work. Pshutim, that kfufim k'pshutim, pshutim k'kfufim are things that do not work. This is a question of Rav Chisda, that the word kafuf and pashut is just another way of saying pashut is what we call a final letter, and kafuf is what we call a closed letter, a a letter in the beginning of the words. So you have meraglim, mem is kafuf, and mem sofit is pashut, at least at this stage in the Gemara. Bottom line is, you got a brisa that says first that you cannot switch them around. So how does the Gemara answer it? This is step number 4. He says there's another Tana that explicitly said, not like Rabbi Yehuda, that's just implicit, but explicitly said that in the Sefer Torah, it does not matter. Who is that Tana? An ancient Tana, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, all the way back to the beginning of the Tanaim. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira made the following statement. This is a brisa of Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. He brings down the famous makar that we all know, that on Sukkot there's a special mitzvah called Nisuch Hamayim. What's the makar for Nisuch Hamayim? Is because there's 3 letters that are anomalous, that don't fit in when we're going through the different days on Sukkot of what are the kabbalas that you're supposed to bring in Parshas Pinchas. And over there, this is what it says over here. Let me just read you the exact quote. It says, Nema b'sheni, on the second day, it says, V'niskehem, on the 6th day, Unisacheha, and on the 7th day, Kamishpatom. So you have, normally in all the other days of Sukkot, it says, V'niska, Vav, Nun, Samach, Kaf, Hey. But here, the first one, you have an extra mem, then you have an extra yud, and the third one is once again an extra mem. But the problem is that when you put it together, you get the word mayim. Not really, because the first letter of mayim in the Chumash is a regular mem, is a mem sofit, and you're trying to write a regular mem. So in honor of the great Rosh Shmuel Ross from Denver, I'm going to give a quick summary of everything we're saying over here. We're learning up the Gemara step by step, and the Gemara over here brings down a defense of Reb Chista's statement that Reb Chista holds like Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, who holds that it doesn't make a difference in your Chumash if you write a regular mem or a final mem, perfectly interchangeable. That's Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, and that obviously will be Rabbi Yehuda in the Mishnah as well, according to Reb Chista. And then you have another brisa that says, no, it does not work. And that's, I guess, everybody else. Okay, life is good. Well, not really, because now comes the fun part. I warned you, we're just going over Gemara by heart. Those of you that don't have it in front of you, the Gemara in front of you, you just have to stay with me. Now comes the fun part. The Gemara asks and says, wait a second, hold on, one moment. You are just saying it's a simple equation going from mem sofit to a regular mem, or is the same as a regular mem to a mem sofit. They're equally interchangeable. He says, but that's patently not true, because, says the Gemara, it says, wait a second. Let me just give you the exact words. The Gemara says, Sosum vasu pasuach. The Gemara says, mi dami, how can you compare this? Pasuach va'asu sosum, iloyi kuma'alile. There is actually an upgrade if you take a regular mem and instead write a mem sofit. Why? Because in the luchos, says Rav Chista, mem v'samach shebeluchos b'nei sayayimdim. Whoa, okay, that's crazy. The mem and the samach in the luchos were held by a miracle. So let me just explain to you what's going on. You probably did learn this when you were in kindergarten. If I am Moses, and these are one of the luchos over here, and I've got Anochi and Loyia, etc., 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 what happens if you have a final mem? What are you going to do? Or the letter samach. So there is, I actually bothered to count it today. There's 22 times you see the mem sofit in the version in Parshas Yisro, and twice you have the letter samach. And that's interesting. If those of you, I just by chance I counted 25 regular mems. A lot of mems in the 10 Commandments. 25 regular mems and 22 mem sofits. Just those of you who are into Hasidus, just say this to you into square brackets. when at the Kete Egal, so it says that Moshe Rabbeinu lost 1,000th of his wisdom at the Kete Egal. It's a medrash, and the Sfarim bring down, the Holy Sfarim bring down that that's the small Vayikra, the Aleph of Vayikra, the small Zeira represent that little Aleph. Aleph is also Aleph, which is 1,000, represents what he lost, what Moshe Rabbeinu lost. So the Rebbe from Kamarna, this is brought down in Belze Chasidus, the Rebbe from Kamarna made a cheshbon that there is a medrash that says that when Moshe Rabbeinu destroyed the luchos, so how do you and I picture it? The way we were taught as kids, that the luchos suddenly became super heavy. Why? Because the holy letters went up to Shemayim because of the Chet Egel. He couldn't carry anymore. The letters were no longer holding this extraordinarily heavy luchos. So much of it drops them, right? That's the way we learn. But there's another medrash that says no, that at the Chet Egel, the mace holding up the mem and the samach. So if you have over here, if you imagine the letter mem, it's a square, with the letter samach, which is a circle. So we know that they were chars, they were engraved. The Gemara tells us that it was engraved all the way to the other end. The Gemara goes on and we'll discuss whether on the other side you have mirror image or not, or was there a nace, which is what Rashi says in Parshas Kisisa, Ksuvim Mizeh, that miraculously, doesn't matter which way, it went all the way through, and you can see exactly the same from both sides. Ksuvim Mizeh u'Mizeh. Rabbi Frand once told us that you see from here, it doesn't matter which way you look at it, there's no small print. Torah is always good. It's the Musar side over here. But the bottom line is that the Samach and the MEM SOFIT, if you have a look, there's a little square in the inside. How on earth could it go all the way through without crashing, without falling? So the answer is, says the Gemara, our Gemara over here, Shabbos Kuftalid, B'neis haya miraculously, it managed to stay up. So Moshe Rabbeinu is going with 22 ongoing miracles. Shas, with the letter Mem Sofit, I am the Lord your God that took you out of the land of Egypt, Mitzrayim. So that Mem Sofit was magically going all the way through. You could see on the other side as well. And when Moshe Rabbeinu, at the time of the Chet Egel, when Moshe went to Chet Egel, so there's one medrash that says that miracle disappeared, and that little inside of the mem fell out, and that's Shuras Haluchos. That's all it was. Wasn't the whole thing crash? It was that little miracle stuff. Those 22 miracles things came out, and twice from the letter Samach. So the Kamarna Rebbe makes a cheshbon that if there's 22 times the letter mem, do the math. Oh, it's too early in the morning. 22 times 40. Where are you, Rabbi Ross? 22 times 40, 48, 96, 960. 960, there we go. Plus the two samachs is, it's going to be 980, excuse me. Yeah, 980. And then you have two samachs is 120. Together makes 1,000. It's the Hasidic Shavar. So that is those things, the 1,000, with the 1,000 that Moshe Rabbeinu lost was from the samachs and the mems. This is just a little bit on the side just to get you into the sugya. The point of the story is that in the luchos, you had the letter Mem Sofit. This is what happened. It was through a miracle that it stayed that way. Now, the Gemara at this point now assumes that if there was a Mem Sofit, everything was a Mem Sofit. There was no regular Mem. We're going to see in a moment why. Because later on in history, the great rabbis called the Tzefim introduced another form of Mem. That is the next line of the Gemara. So what the Gemara is assuming now is that the original luchos only had the square mem, which we call a final mem. That's all there was. So it's just a crazy thing. We grew up with the Aleph face as children, that we all know what a mem looks like. No, this point of the Gemara was saying there was no regular mem. There was only what we call today mem sofit, the final mem. Mem Sosum, as we call it over here, that's the only thing that existed. What's the next line of the Gemara? The next line the Gemara says, he says that you should know, Mem v'samos shebeluchos, b'nei sayayimim, and then the Gemara says that if you take the letter MEM SOFIT, and then you write a regular MEM, what we call a MEM, you've downgraded it. That would be something that would be forbidden in the Sefer Torah. To Rab Yirmiyah, Vitim Rab Chira Ava, Menatzbach Seifim Amru. Mem, Nun, Tzadi, Pei, Chaf, the 5 letters that get a final letter, those letters, what we now at this point now in the Gemara call the regular version, was written later on in history. The Tzefim, these extraordinary people called the Tzefim, we'll see who they are in a moment. Meaning, the bottom line is, at this point in the Gemara, we're saying something incredible, that rabbis, prophets, later on in history, came up with new letters that never existed. The Mem, the Nun, the Tzadi, the Pei, and the Chaf, what we call Menatzpach in the language of Kabbalah, the Menatzpach letters. They were created by the Tzefim later on in history. That's what the Gemara is saying at this point now. Which means when Adam Arishon saw the first behema, and he said, "Oh my gosh, I see a base, a hay, a mem, and a hay. This is a behema." Well, obviously, domestic animals will call behemas. So that mem he saw was what we call a square, not the regular mem. And the Gemara immediately fixes things. The Gemara says, but by the way, the point is that at this stage in the Gemara, we're saying that the only thing that could possibly be okay on Hilchos Shabbos, this is where everything began, is if you write what's called a final mem instead of a regular mem, because that has a precedent, because that's what was there in the luchos. The Gemara says, no, you're thinking krum. It cannot be. The Gemara says, v'tisbara. The pasuk says, Eila ha-mitzvahs, she'eda navi r'shai l'chadish davar me'ata. No such thing that the rabbis woke up and said, let's create new letters. Let's create new building blocks of creation. Never happened. Ela mihave have. They always existed. But Meida lo have yadin. They didn't know Hai be'emsa v'hai be'seif teva. Meaning they always knew there were 2 types of mems, but they got confused what comes at the beginning and what comes at the end. So when they wrote Mitzrayim, no one knew the mem at the beginning or the mem sofit at the end. When they wrote Mayim, no one knew it. Everyone was confused. And then the Tzefim came and fixed it. And then the Gemara explains what that means. They fixed it. It means what happened was no one remembered it anymore. And they said, no, this is the way it's supposed to be. These 2 letters that have always existed, this is a final letter, and this is a regular mem. That's what they did. They always existed. They forgot what was a middle letter and what was an end letter. And that is the end of the Gemara that we need over here. And it is with tremendous honor we have the great Mayor Strobel from Baltimore joining us just at the right time to quickly overview everything we've learned over here. Just to give you just a quick overview, Rav Meir, Shalom Aleichem. See if you recognize any of your friends over here. The bottom line is that the Gemara says that these great Seifim, these great extraordinary people called Seifim, they knew what was capital letters and what was regular letters, what was final letters and what was beginning letters. And they were the one that introduced it later on in history. Now, I don't care if you forget everything that I've said till now. What you need to know for the rest of the share, and I'm warning you now, you better put your safety belts on because we are going on a ride over here. This is going to be so incredibly interesting. I'm going to ask you now three very simple questions on the Gemara that we just learned. And I'm sure a lot of you are actually, in your mind, you're thinking through these questions over here. Let's talk them through over here. The most obvious questions, just in terms of history, the historical value over here. What on earth is going on over here that once upon a time we had without going into the whole discussion of Ksav Ivri versus Ksav Ashuri, some of you may know there were 2 different fonts, 2 different lettering systems. I'm talking about the actual regular stuff that we have in the Sefer Torah. That once upon a time they had a mem and a mem sofit, and suddenly they went through a period of history where everybody forgot what was the middle letter, what was the beginning letter, and what was the end letter. What are the menatzpachs at the end, and what are the menatzpachs at the beginning and in the middle of a Hebrew word? It got forgotten. Let's try and picture how on earth this could possibly happen. And keep in mind that all the way till the Aron HaKodesh was hidden by Yoshio, King Yoshio hid um, um, the Aron HaKodesh. So if it really was forgotten, and remember that Moshe Rabbeinu had already instituted before Ezra came along and did Monday, Thursday, and Shabbos Mincha. Moshe Rabbeinu instituted that once a week you had to read from the Chumash. So they had Chumashim. But if you didn't have a Chumash, if you didn't have a Chumash near you, and let's say that for some reason no one had a Chumash, but you always had the Aron HaKodesh, and you could open up and see the words Mitzrayim in the Ten Commandments, which is the small mem, which is the final mem. So when you write your next Sefer Torah, you know what to do. There always was the Aron HaKodesh to look at. And if you do not want to have access to the Aron HaKodesh, you don't want to open it up and check out what's going on, well, you wore tefillin this morning, open them up. You have a mezuzah on your door, open it up. See how the word Mitzrayim is written. The small mem, final mem. How can you forget how to write Hebrew letters? How can you forget what's a cap, what's a final letter, and what's a regular letter? It doesn't make any sense. How could this thing possibly unfold? This is an obvious question that the Achronim discuss. I'm going to give you in a few minutes as something beautiful from the Rashash in the back of the Gemara Megillah. The Gemara Megillah has this Gemara that we're learning just now, almost identical, a little bit of changes at the very beginning of Maseches Megillah. The bottom of Beis Amud Beis and the top of Gimel Amud Aleph is very similar to what we are learning together. Now stay with me, Rabbi Isai. So this question number one is just to understand what exactly is going on over here. Anyone had access to the knowledge. The Turi Even asked this question in Megillah and leaves it b'tzarchian. He does not have an answer. How did these things happen? So that is question number one. Question number two, who are these tzayfim? These are these magical, Rashi in Megillah calls them Nevi'ei Hadeiros. They were prophets from that generation. Some people say prophets over a series of 5 generations. Doesn't make any difference. Who were these magical tzayfim? Can we have their names, please? Will they please stand up for us? And when did they sit there and say, now is the time? We have to figure out how to write a mezuzah, how to write a Sefer Torah. What on earth is going on? Who are these tzayfim? And thirdly, and finally, this is literally my most important question, because this is the chiddush that I want to talk about. Why is it that we need 5 of the letters to be written 2 different ways? You have a regular and then you have a final. Well, what's going on? Mem, Nun, Tzadi, Pei, Chaf. Anyone that ever opened up a Kabbalistic sefer ever knows that menatzpach is a huge concept in Kabbalah. So, yeah, some of you are over 40, you should be learning this stuff. The menatzpach, Binyamin, you have a pass, a Yisraeli pass. Everyone else, you got to know about menatzpach. But what on earth is going on? You have a regular mem, and then you have a final mem, a pashut, a sasam, or we saw the word kfufim, different words for it. What is going on? Why do we need these things over here? Just summarize my 3 questions. Number 1, I want to know history. How did we forget something that is in constant use? Number 2, who are the tzayfim? And number 3, when these tzayfim came along and did this huge thing, why in the first place are there 2 letters for mem? We're going to focus on the letter mem, even though this question could be equally asked on the nun, a tzadi, and a pei, and a chaf, okay, all the menatzmachs. So let's begin at the beginning. The Rashash says something extraordinary, and whoa, okay, to answer the Turi Evans question, and you find the Rashash, it's right there at the beginning of Megillah, and he says, when our Gemara says, V'loi hayadina, they did not know which is the regular mem, which is the final mem, he brings a bunch of sukkim where the word yadinan means to place. They always knew what the letters looked like. They just forgot. They didn't know how to place it. He says, excuse me. He said they didn't forget. When it says a shakum, means they forgot where to place it, meaning the following thing. He said, V'shacham, to make it into a system that was fixed. He says, what would happen is that people were told that you can use either, and they're both perfectly legit. Okay, hold on to this thought. This is a little strange. You're a sofer. You're living in the times of Yoshua ben Nun, in the times of Shmuel, what the times of David HaMelech, and you're writing David HaMelech's tefillin, and you ask David HaMelech, how would you like your mems on your MEM SOFIT? David HaMelech says, whatever you want. Make your choices. So you could write the word Mitzrayim, I guess, 4 different ways, right? Small mem, big mem, final mem, small mem, final mem, small mem. You had 4 different ways of writing Mitzrayim, all perfectly legit. And then at some point in the history, the Tzeifu says, we're not having this anymore. We know the Yadinan, we don't know how to place them. We're going to start placing them. And the Menatzbach come at the end, and every other time you have Mem, Nun, Tzadi, Pei, Chaf. This is how you write them in the beginning and the middle of a Hebrew word. So they made Seder. It was no longer Hefker. It was no longer do as you choose. Who says this? The Heilige Rashash. Okay, so this is something that fascinates me because no one asked this question, and I'm going to give you my own personal answer. So let's say you and I were super curious and we did something very naughty. We want to take a peek into the luchos. What exactly would we see if we looked into the luchos? I mean, there's got to be a Seder. Maybe they didn't look into the luchos, but what would happen if they did? So I honestly believe that being a Talmud of Ramesh Shapiro, I heard these kind of ideas from him many, many times. You say that when you look to the luchos was not like I did beforehand. It's like a basic, like a piece of rock, like it is in the movie The 10 Commandments. Moshe Rabbeinu comes down with whatever it is. He's got his 10 Commandments over here, and he walks around like this. And then it's got that's not what happened over here. It's not what happened. The luchos were not really part of Teva. Everything about it, like again, 22 letters you could see all the way through. It wasn't really part of Teva. The Archaim HaKodesh says that if you were on a high enough madrega, you could see all 613 commandments in the luchos. And if you want a super high madrega, you could actually hear Teresh V'Peh, the words could come out from the luchos and tell you exactly what you need to do to live your life. I have no idea what this means. All I know is depending on your madrega, you will get different things out of the luchos. And for the luchos could have been different things for different people. Just to give you something that's just as a mashal, it's not exact at all. I once heard when I was your age, meaning 30, 40 years ago, a story. I have no idea if it's authentic, but I have no problem with it being not true because this could be true, theoretically. Story goes that somebody was allowed to go into the Vatican to see the big D Kahuna. It sounds a little strange to me, but that's how I heard the story when I was young. And he goes in and he sees the big D Kahuna. How cool is that? Well, the obvious thing is that he saw the tzitz. So you know this from your art scroll, Sefer Shmos, that there's a Machlokes, how Kodesh Hashem was written. It's all the Gemara and Menachos, all the different shitas, some of you holding by these different shitas. What did he see? So the way I heard it is that he looked at the tzitz and he saw simultaneously both opinions, both the Rashba and the Rambam. I don't remember exactly how everything fits in. Bottom line is that you could open up the Aron HaKodesh and theoretically I would see Mitzrayim written one way, you'd see Mitzrayim written another way. Nothing was clear. Nothing was clear. You had to be, Moshe Rabbeinu would see it his way, and already made by Yeshua, could it be that he already saw it a little bit differently? I don't exactly understand how these things work. But later on in history, it became necessary to change. Everything had to become abundantly clear, and that's what the Tzofim came along and did over here. Who were these Tzofim? Three opinions. And you'll see immediately there's a pattern over here. The first two opinions is the Tesis and the Rashba. Tesis says that this is Tesis and Megillah, and seems to be Rashi's opinion as well, that the Nevi'im that lived immediately after that, the father of Yoshiyahu, who was Amoin Harasha, Aleph Mem Vav Nun, he burnt the Sefer Torah of Yoshiyahu. Remember, Yoshiyahu had a very special Sefer Torah that had a Mesiris to it that was authentic. It was the Sefer Torah with a Mesiris, and it was burnt. It's a story in Malachim Beis, Perek of Aleph. So immediately afterwards, they said, now we have to make Seder with the letters. The Rashba brings down, no, it's just a generation later, after Yeshiyahu HaMelech was Gaines the Aron HaKodesh, and these two shittas tell us that this was during the Tkufa of Nevi'im, and it makes sense, because the word Tzofim means the visionaries. Tzofim, the word Tzipia, they could see into the future. It's the same way you have Chazayin Yeshayahu, the people with eyes, right? The people that have the ability to see far. The Yerushalmi in Megillah has a really, really interesting backstory. Who were the Tzofim? He says, no, the Tzofim was much, much later in history. The Yerushalmi brings down at the very beginning of Megillah, in Perek Aleph, in Halacha Tes, in Yerushalmi, Beis Rabban. This was the Tinoikishal Beis Rabban. These were the children that lived, that later on became the leaders of Klal Yisrael. During that Kufa, when they were children, they were the Tzofim. At the child state, these people, extraordinary children that went on, who were amongst those people, Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer, the great rabbis of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer, when they were kids, they were the one that did this whole thing. Start to think, Rabbi Isai, what period of history was that? Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer were Talmidim of who? Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Who was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai? He was the story in the Gemara and Gittin at the time of the Churban, the leader of Klal Yisrael during the Churban, that would make that the Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer's children, they saw the Churban and they were there in the aftermath of the Churban, and they say, okay, things have got to change. We've got to get the MEM SOFIT figured out. This is what's called transitional periods in history where the world was very dark and we need the leadership to fix things. Similarly, the other two shittas, meaning Rashi and Tesis and the Rashba, they say it was the time of Yeshiyahu HaMelech, either after Ammon destroyed the Sefer Torah or after Yeshiyahu himself was Gaines, the Aron HaKodesh. They came along and said, we've got to make Seder over here. This is just before the Churban of Bais Rishon, but everything was falling very fast into the world of Golus. Now we've got to get this out. So either talking about Bais Rishon or we're talking about Churban Bais Sheni. Both of them is when there's been a massive nituk, disconnection from the Messiah, from Har Sinai. The Tzofim come along and the visionaries, they look into the future and they say, we're going to do something. I'll show you in a moment that I believe that Tzofim is the same word as Tzipia Yeshua. The Vilna Gaon, the Gra says that the reason why it's called Menatzbach, Mem, Nun, Tzadi, Pei, Chaf at the end, no, it should be the Chaf should come first. So he said the word Menatzbach, you can break it down. It says Min Tzapach, right? Tzapach means Tzefayach. Those are from the people that were from Tzefayach, the visionaries. So the word Menatzbach is written, so the word Tzofim is included in the vernacular when we say that phrase. So the Gra tells us, yeah, don't forget, Menatzbach, the Tzofim came along. What did they do? They came to save the day. They came to make Seder. Mem over here, Mem Sofit over there. That's the way it has to be forever. Anything different, the Sefer Torah is not kosher. The Rivash brings this down the halacha. The fact that the Mem was magically held up in the luchos. So the Rivash says, so here you see that if you see a tiny little crack in your Mem Sofit, the Sefer Torah is possible. Because if there was a slight little crack in Moshe Rabbeinu's luchos, so it's no longer a miracle. It could hold on with that little thread. Get it? That's the Rivash brings that down. I don't know how, whatever. The bottom line is that's how we paskin the halacha. We've got the beginning mem. So I'm looking at the holy Meir Strobel. So the mem of Meir is different from the mem of Chaim Zimmerman. They're the mem at the end. This goes back all the way to the Tzayfim, either Rebbe Eliezer, Rebbe Yeshua, or that's Kufa of Yeshio HaMelech. Now, what were they actually doing? So this is the fun part of the class. I just have to tell you that sometimes HaKadosh Baruch Hu smiles at me. When I have to prepare share, so there's so much written on letters. What am I going to do? I've got hundreds of notes from Rav Moshe Shapiro. I'm going to find out about this thing about the mem. So just by pure chance, we're in Parshas Korach. So there's this guy called Pinchas Friedman. He comes out with this once a week. I never look at it, never ever look at it. Honestly, it gets sent to me by Ezra Berger from Brooklyn. And whenever I look at it, if I have time, I always love it. By chance, I looked at it. Just by chance, I didn't even know it was on my phone. And I see, oh my gosh, he talks about Machlokes, and he talks about, we'll see in a moment, Parshas Korach things. I'm not going to talk about 90% of his essay. Just there's one thing in there that says, whoa, okay, game changer. I never heard this before. Never heard this from my Rebbeim. This is so exciting. He quoted from the Zera Kodesh. That's the Ravshitzer Rebbe. Now, the Ravshitz was the last of the Talmidim of the Chayzer. Technically speaking, he's already the 5th generation of Chassidus. So you have the Baal Shem Tov, the Maggid of Mezrich, the Elimelech Lezhensk, and the Chayzer, and then Natalia Ravshitz. Be the SMA. Natalia Ravshitz was an extraordinary person. He had a terrific sense of humor. I don't have time to talk about him, but people used to go to him at weddings. He used to do batchonis and make the chassan kala laugh until they were crying from laughter. And all the gedolim used to come along and listen to the poems that he used to say, and they used to take notes because it was all ramazim of Kabbalah. He was able to entertain at this level and say deep things on another level. And he taught us something about the letter Mem and the letter Mem Sofit. Something incredible. And again, Baruch Hashem, we're zeicher to have these people to take us through things that we've been doing since a child. Your little child in Cheder knows to say the letter Mem. Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Mem. Say the word Mem. 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 If you want to say the word Mem, you're saying two types of Mems. The first part is like M-E-H, mem, right? And then the mem at the end is closed. Both of them come from they're from the letters that come from the lips. And the kai, Hashem sefasai tiftach, open up my lips. So mem is a lip letter, like b, a bump, right? The mem, pei, right? It's a lip letter, and it's made out of two parts. The ma begins, and then the mem sofit at the end is in the letter mem. So mem is really a mem and a mem. The first mem is the beginning mem. The second mem is the final mem. It's two different sounds. It's two different sounds that comes out of your mouth every time you say the letter mem. Says the Heilige Ravshitzer, Zera Kodesh. It's an extraordinary sefer. I've never learned it, but my friends who have learned it tell you it's amongst the top 10 classic sefer in Hasidus. And here you see a little bit why. And then he goes on to say that you should just know that the difference between the two mems is what's called the difference between the beginning of a journey and the end of a journey. Everything in life starts with the regular mem and ends with the final mem. And that journey for a Jew is called the journey of Teresh Shabbat Peh. This is what he writes. Teresh Shabbat Peh, you and your Charusa, you start your story begins with a small mem, with a regular mem, a pasha, and ends with a sasam mem. I'll explain to you what that means in a moment, but he just points out that mem and mem is gematria 80. It's the letter pei. Pei means Teresh Shabbat Peh, needs two mems. Then he points out, since we're already having fun, Mishnayis Teresh Shabbat Peh begins with Me'ema Saikaran Es Hashema, is the letter mem, and ends with the Mishnayis in Yadayim Hashem Yavarach Es Amo Bashalom Mem. Shalom ends with Shalom, begins with Me'em Asai, begins with the small mem, the mem of Meir Strobel, and ends with a capital mem, the mem of Chaim Zimmerman. This is how these things are. So just stay with me. Stay with me. One more thought from the Heilige Rav Shitza. He says that that if you gotta stay focused, you start off with the regular mem, you end with the final mem. We need to stay focused because the Yetzer Hara is going to try and break things up. Yetzer Hara, it's Yud Tzadi Reish. He says, what's Mitzrayim? Mem, mem, and in the middle is not Yud Tzadi Reish, but Tzadi Reish Yud, stands for Yetzer. Mitzrayim is your straitjacketed. The journey has been broken up by the Yetzer Hara, and you've lost everything. He says, in your base of Medrash, you get the beginning right, the end right, and keep focus that nothing, what he calls the chitzanim, the mazikim, nothing should come in and mess up the seder that you're doing over here. Just for the record, this I did hear from my Rebbe Moshe Shapiro. He always likes to point out that mem is always the letter of the journey because it's the middle letter. It's exactly in the middle. If you put the menatzpachs at the end, it's 27, it's 13 on one side, 13 on one side. The mem is the middle, like emes, aleph, mem, tov. The mem is always the middle of the aleph base. And he says that, I can't remember, it was the chidah, or he said it in the name of the Ben Ish Chai, but I think it was the chidah. He says mem is the letter that the great domestic animals, the cow and the sheep, they live always in the journey. They have no past, no future. They live in the middle. So therefore they go meh or moo, okay? The ma is the letter that they give out because they're stuck in the middle. Now we have the journey from before going to somewhere. That is the story of the Yid. And the Yid travels with his mouth. The Yid travels with the Beis Medrash and learning to get from the Aleph to the Tov to get everything to the world of MS. So that is how a Yid learns. Bottom line is, this is all the Torah of the Rav Shitza. The Maharal comes along. This is Nesiv Shalom, Perek Aleph, and adds an extra dimension to what we just learned together. He adds that the opening mem is the mem of Machlokes. Well, why? Because you look at the mem is open at the bottom, meaning that all the bad stuff can come in, which is where fighting goes on. And the mem sasum is the mem of shalom. So machlokes, shalom. It says the maral is the mem, the regular mem is open to machlokes, and the final mem is open to shalom. Now, just to put the two things together, it doesn't have to be a problem. It doesn't have to be a problem because in the Beis Medrash, you want everything to begin with a machlokes. What's the machlokes? Is two chavrusas or chabura trying to learn up a sugya, and in the end, Tamid Chachamim, if they stay focused and they stay on the path and everything comes out good, so then you get to the shalom of tzaddikim and gedolim and us, you and I in the Beis Medrash with our chavrusa on your own. You come out, no one to fight with. You always come out without pre-ascroll, right? You always come out with possibly one conclusions, but your chavrusa, you say this, he says that, back and forth. In the end, everyone's hugging each other. Everyone enjoys the fact that they fought it out together because everyone has clarity in the sugya. So let me just summarize over here what the Tzefim were doing over here. The Tzefim have 2,000 years of history to deal with of Galus. They say now is the time that we need to change what was. I don't really know what was. I can't understand exactly. I can't explain to you why it didn't matter in ancient times. The two things were not important that I don't understand. I don't have anyone, Meir Strobel, I don't have Rabbi Rodman to ask. He's in Poland at the moment. People that I don't know why, but I do understand that the Tzefim who lived in these transitional periods and they want to Klal Yisrael in Galus, you got the Beis Medrash, start off with healthy machlokes. Don't let the Yud Tzadi Reish of the Yetzer Hara get in and end up with Shalom. Then we'll make it to the final end. We'll make it to that glorious moment called the world of Shalom, which is the Shalom that Mashiach is going to bring. That's what we are trying to do over here. So let me just summarize. I've answered our questions, and I just want to show you one more thing. I've answered our questions. What was the three questions we had? What was it that in the beginning, Mem and Mem Sofit, we didn't know the difference? We didn't need to know the difference. It's Seifim, who lived in this transitional period, they came along and say, you have to be focused on the long-term picture. The beginning of the process is Machlokes, and the end of the process is going to be the Shalom, the clarity, and that's how Klal Yisrael is going to bring ourselves to the final Geula. I want to finish off with one last thought, and you guys hold on for it for a week and say it next Friday night at your Shabbos table. Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu, he was the man of Shalom. It's a Zohar that says, Oisei Shalom b'mreimav da Yaakov. This is Yaakov Avinu. The Kabbalah says he made Shalom between Avram and Yitzchak. We're not going to go into that. Avram was Chesed, Yitzchak was Gevurah, and Yaakov brings this beautiful Tiferes between the two of them. But just the midah of Yaakov was Shalom. He passed it on to his son Yosef. We're not going to talk about it. I once gave a share on the word Shalom and explained this in great detail. Before he dies, he comes along and he wants to reveal the Kates to the 12 tribes, and he basically ends up telling them, because as we all know, he forgets or it's taken away from him. He tells them, if you want to get to the end of days, you have to do exactly what you're doing now. The 12 tribes were all around his bed in the position that they would be in the future in the Midbar. And he says, if you are B'Shalom, so then you can bring the world to its final Geula. So what do they say? Don't worry, my father. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Aleph is you, Yaakov. Ches Daled are your 12 sons. Everything fits in. We're all there for you. So the Shema became the symbol of Achdus, of Klal Yisrael. That's what the Shvatim were trying to say. Comes along. This is so interesting, right? Me'em Asai, right? The Mem Machlokes. Don't worry, Father. It's going to reach all the way to the world. Hashem Yevarach es Amo Bashalom. But it's so interesting. The Me'em Asai is Keren es Shema. The first little Mem is talking about the Sugi of Shema. It's the Achdus that's going to bring you all the way to the end of Mishnayos Yadayim. It's going to be the Yichud. Now, how does Rashi say? The first Rashi in Pasuk Korach, it says the Yichus of Korach. It stops before Yaakov. Rashi brings down from the Medrash Tanchuma, Lehiskir ben Yaakov shebikesh rachamim al atzmai shliyizach shmoi shel al machlokes. He does not want that machlokes should be connected to him, because I'm the man of Shalom. I want nothing to do with Korach. And Rav Pinchas Friedman points out, he says in Shvilei Pinchas, he says, brings down the pasuk, we say in Parshas Vayechi, that Yaakov says, B'kahalam al techad kvedi, I don't want my honor to be with the kahal. Rashi there says, is referring to Korach, B'kahalam, B'kahal mem, B'kahal mem. They took the mem and turned it into the mem of Machlokes, not the Machlokes of the Beis Medrash, but the anti-Beis Medrash, the Machlokes that brings down the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu. And therefore, you and I, you want to bring Mashiach, and of this I'm going to end, Rabbi Isai, that we have to, like Moshe, like Yaakov Avinu, paranoid, not to be connected to Machlokes, Adarabba, every way that we can in our own backyard, ask ourselves, where can we make Shalom in our shul, in our family, wherever we come from? What can we do to be part of the plan of the Tzefim, to bring the story from the mem that's open to the mem that's closed, the mem that is a perfect cycle. The mem that's closed is the mem that is protecting us from the outside world and nurturing us. B'tznius, I didn't get a chance to explain the letter mem, the shape, but in Kabbalah also the fact that it's not round, that it's 4 squares. Each individual is contributing their own line, and each one is creating this beautiful thing called the Mem of Shalom, where everything is in harmony with everything else, and in the inside, hidden in the inside, is what connects us to the higher Oisei Shalom Bimraimov, which is what Yaakov Avinu so desperately wanted for Klal Yisrael. We can be part of that, and Be'ez Hashem Yisbrach, we will be zeicher to the Mashiach Tzidkenu, who will bring that world of Oisei Shalom Bimraimov into the whole world down over here. Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'Kol Am Yisrael B'Shalom, and then it will spread to the whole world, till the world will come to its final shlemus, with the final tikkun of the letter Mem of the MEM SOFIT. Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, we should all be zeicha meher v'yameinu. Reb Eli, have safe travels, and thank you all for joining us. It means so much to me to see each and every single one of you. All the best. Great Shabbos. Thank you.
Shabbos.